All right. All right, welcome back, everybody. You can go ahead and have a seat. We're going to now have a discussion with these four brothers on the stage. So earlier we heard from pastors and planters that we've sent out from Cornerstone really all over the country, out west and then up in the northeast. And then now we're going to hear from these brothers that have been sent out by Cornerstone locally, more locally at least, within the state of Tennessee. And it helps us keep in mind that the gospel is to be taken to the ends of the earth and right here in our backyard. And so, brothers, thanks for being here. And I just want to first give you a chance to introduce yourselves. Tell us about who you are, background, family, and what your current ministry is. So why don't we start over here with Michael.
Michael Spain. I am married to Petra. We have 4 kids. I've told Aaron earlier I kind of feel like the oddball, sort of. I'm older than most of the guys, and I'm in a lot further ahead stage of life. My oldest one is married, so I'm a father-in-law, and I have 3 in high school. So anyway, but we're in Milan, and we were sent out by Cornerstone in 2018. Milan is my hometown. Grew up there, and then we pastored in Humboldt for a while through my time at Union, and then moved to North Carolina, attended Southeastern Seminary, pastored all while I was there for 8 years, did the MDiv, the PhD, and then moved back. And while I was writing, we joined here, and we're here about 4 years, and I was doing some interim work and then doing some teaching and stuff here. And then they sent us out in 2018, and so I'm pastoring Grace and Peace Church in Milan, and then also teaching seminary for the extension here, and also work at a middle school in Milan. Been doing that. So, yeah, there you go.
Thanks, brother. We have another Michael here.
My name is Michael Lee, and my wife is here with me today, is Ashton, and we have 3 kids, Shiloh, Eden, and Hudson, and I am bivocational as well. We live here in Jackson, and I work at Augustine School, where my children attend, and I work as pastor in Sardis, Tennessee, which is just a little bit south of Lexington, Tennessee. So if you don't know where that is, you can maybe Lexington can help you orient that. I said I would never go back to my hometown, which is Lexington, and we're trying the best we can to move back there now with a glad heart. So that's a wonderful thing. I did do the internship only once, only needed it once. And did the MDiv at Southern, and so yeah, that's about it.
What do you teach at Augustine?
Yes, thank you. I'm upper school humanities teacher, so I'll teach literature classes. My main background as far as theology goes is apologetics, and I teach an apologetics course and a Latin course.
All right. Zach?
Hey, my name is Zach Wiley. I graduated from Union in 2017, and then met my lovely wife here at Cornerstone, and we got married not too long ago, 2019. We have 1 son. His name is Samuel, and another one on the way. He's due in January. I went through the internship here at Cornerstone and was sent out in 2020 to Providence Baptist Church. It's a small country church about 30 minutes west of here.
All right. And then Cody?
I'm Cody Harden. I just recently moved about a year and a half ago. You'll know me better as Katie Watson's husband. And we moved to Nashville, right outside of Nashville, to take a position as college and young adult, college and career, next gen, whatever you want to think about it that way. They're right outside of Nashville in Joelton. So we've been there a little over a year now.
Yeah. So I was just remembering that the 3 of you all took daughters of Cornerstone away, didn't you? And we're not bitter about that at all.
I knew this was a trap.
Yeah. Tom had a really good question to the other guys, and I wanted to use it. And I didn't ask Tom for permission, but now I'm asking,
You don't
and
have
he
to do
just
that
gave it
these
to me
days.
right there. So this is a great question, and I thought it would be good for whoever wants to answer this in whatever order. But what did you imagine earlier in life that you would be doing, and then how has the Lord brought you to where you are? What's the story where you can see the Lord at work?
Elders first.
Well, I am not doing at all what I thought I would be doing, to be honest. It's been quite a journey. My calling has always been, to pastor, but then also I wanted to be in the academic world as well, and so to teach and be a professor and all that. So I really thought that I would be doing one full-time, the other part-time, whichever one that was. It didn't matter. And I'm like Michael, when I was in North Carolina, I joked with my wife. I was like, there is no way we would ever move back to Milan. And although we loved Milan and our family's all there, I was like, there's no way that we would do that because we don't fit in there. Theologically, methodologically, in all kinds of ways. I was like, we'll never be there, and then here we are, and been there for 8 years now. And I never thought that I would be working at a middle school. I never thought that. But it's been a blessing because I was able to reunite with some folks, and then, of course, I've been able to build some relationships. It's been good because my kids are all not only in Milan schools but active in sports, and so there's a lot of perks involved with those kind of things. But I think one of the biggest things for me is, and I see it now, always when we go down the road and we look back, we go, okay, I see, Lord, what you were doing, is when we first moved back to Milan, I had people approach us about planting a church or starting a church in Milan. And my default answer was no, because I don't feel like I'm supposed to do that, and this is my hometown. That won't work. And that actually happened a few times, and there was no leading at all to do that. And during that time, of course, we were here. And, of course, I was able to forge relationships with the elders here. And there's a lot of camaraderie, I think, with us. And, I was able to teach some here, taught hermeneutics, preached, did some other Sunday school stuff. And during that time, I was finishing my writing. And then all right there in the midst of all that is when y'all proposed to the Board of Trustees at Southern about taking over the extension. And you had several guys with PhDs in systematics, and then you've got Dr. Smith with church history, and you had a few union guys, and then, here I come, the lonely preaching professor. And, I saw the Lord's timing and all that. Plus, planting eventually in Milan, we would not have been able to do that if we would not have had the time here, to have the endorsement from here, to have the support group from here, to have the prayers and stuff from here. So, yeah, it's not at all what I thought I'd be doing, and there's still some things where I want to pull my hair out and scream and say, I'm like Lee, what am I doing, Lord? But at the same time, all of that is the Lord's sovereignty, working those things out.
Thank you, brother.
So I'll go ahead and go. When I started the internship, the pastors sat us all down, I think, and asked us, why are you doing this? So I had three answers, three different options of what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach, either the seminary level, I wanted to, or college level, or at a Christian school like where I'm at now. I wanted to pastor, or I wanted a church plant, one of those three. So I don't know which one it's going to be, but I'm okay with any of them. And we tried to go and do the church planting thing several times. We went and visited the O'Days and had a horrible time. And because, we got the stomach bug, right? It was terrible. But we felt the burden of the place. That was the worst part, because we felt the heavy spiritual burden. That was very real. I felt like you could almost touch it, And if you visited him in that area, you can probably know what I'm talking about. So, but we wanted to be there we were one of those families we were thinking about moving out there. to support them, just kind of going alongside. I had the image, of Moses with the hands up, and then he had to have some people come alongside to hold the hands up, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I wanted to support people doing this work. And I'd looked at many different places. I even looked overseas. We talked to the IMB for a long time, and that's what I thought I was going to do. I thought it was going to be church planting. I looked at crazy places like North Korea, and Rob's even here thinking about going there. We will support you, absolutely. The irony and the humor, I think, that the Lord has is seen in, I didn't intend to go back home at all. In fact, I was going to go and do more studies after the internship, and I was working at a Christian school, so one of the three was done. And I thought, I'm going to go ahead and get my PhD, and I'm going to teach at a seminary or university. So I needed to make a little extra money to afford it. And a friend of mine recently stepped down from pastoring a church, and I said, well, I can fill in every now and then, and that will really help with with tuition. And so I started preaching there at Sardis, and things happened in our life that became very clear. You are not going to study right now. And so I backed out and lost income, deposits, and everything like that. And it was a great decision. I felt very good about losing that money, that down payment to be a part of that program. Stayed at the church, and now the funny thing is I'm pastoring and I'm teaching, and we support every church planter of the places that we were thinking about going. And I did not. They were supporting them before I got there. So the little bulletin board, the O'Days were there, the Casey Kid, and were a little picture of them. The Ortizes were there, and they're giving monthly to these people. And I'm like, man, I'm holding all their arms up right here in my hometown, And there's a lot more I could say about that, because the story is still going on. It's still kind of developing, and we're still dreaming about it. But no, I didn't intend to. I had all these things that I wanted to do, and I thought it was just going to be one of them, and it seems like God's allowing all of them to happen, in some way. And so that's really exciting to me that God. I feel like He's got a sense of humor. It's like you think you're going to pigeonhole yourself. Well, He's going to make it to where He can do far more abundantly all than we can ask or think. And so I just feel blessed because we're able to do that. And this type of thing did not anticipate, especially when you called and started talking about your vision about it several months ago. I was like, yeah, we're in. We're all in. Didn't anticipate it, and it's way better than I could have planned.
So there had been some important labor by your predecessor at Sardis to prepare the way for you to step into that.
Absolutely. I can get into that a little bit more later if you want, but expository preaching, consistent preaching of the Word. The people, I stepped in a very easy situation. They just love the Bible. Mm-hmm. You can do just about anything with that. I'm very blessed with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michael's predecessor is Bob Sparks, who was an apprentice here as well. So all kinds of connections there. What about you, Zach?
So for better or worse, and I'm sure there are others like me in here, I'm not wired to dream. I don't vision cast. I don't even have a 5-year plan right now. I really just take the next faithful step. And so, even as a kid, my father, who's been very prophetic in my life, had a hunch that I was going to preach, and he would tell me that pretty consistently. And growing up in Southern Baptist circles, if you see any kid who's theologically minded and seems to have this seed of deep care for the Word of God, you start trying to cultivate that kid. Say, you might preach. I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I wasn't wired to take that and run with it, and maybe even in a negative way. And so I did not even think of preaching until 2015, when I sensed very strongly in a subjective experience the Spirit of God calling me to preach and teach the weighty truth of the gospel. And it was a very profound moment for me, one I'll never forget. And it was very personal. You know, I was sitting there, and it came upon me, it seemed. And so very subjective. So 2015, even then, I didn't know what that meant. So I was at Union, changed my major to Christian Studies, began studying theology. Light starts coming on, and I realized this really is what I was wired to study and care about, and to try to teach others. So I'm doing that and graduate. I knew my studies weren't done. Wasn't sure what was next as I was leading up to my graduation, but I'd heard about this internship at Cornerstone, now the apprenticeship at Cornerstone, and that just seemed like a good next step. So I did it. Tried to join the church. They wouldn't let me because I was playing baseball, and so I was going to have to miss church on Sundays. They're like, yeah, you can't join us until you graduate. So graduated from Union. I was playing baseball at Union, and we miss a lot of Sundays when we're playing ball. So they're like, yeah, you just can't be a member here. I was like, I respect that. So graduated from Union, became a member here, started doing the Cornerstone apprenticeship, and still didn't have a grand vision for what was going to happen. I just knew I was supposed to preach and teach the weighty truth of the gospel. And the Lord and His providence just faithfully guided me to Mary Ann. I met her, and then we found out we're having a child, and like, how are we going to afford this, and what are we going to do? And the Lord just, long story short, in His providence and in His kindness, is just step by step, kind of like Zach Thompson said, just led you to the next thing, and you just do it. And that's where I am. I'm now pastoring a church and preaching and teaching the weighty truth of the gospel to the saints at Providence Baptist Church in Crockett Mills, Tennessee.
Do you have a 15-year preaching spreadsheet?
Yeah. See, no, I don't have that. No.
Yeah.
So I did try to do that when I started there. I even gave our people, I said, hey, look, here's what I'm thinking about doing for the next semester, teaching through the book of Mark, and they said, good luck. And I was like, okay. And no, we went a little bit longer than I meant to. Yeah. They said, how are we doing with our spreadsheet? But it didn't, yeah. But we've had a really good time there. I was saved when I was 10 years old through the miraculous and kind of just ordinary means of Faithful Church ministry. I can think back to so many individuals who kind of stepped in fatherly, motherly ways. My own mom and dad were faithful to take me to church, and my granddad was is still a good example to me of what it looks like just to live faithfully. So right from the get-go, I knew that there was something that I needed and did not have, even as a 10-year-old. Came to Christ. He saved me and moved in my heart to start reading Scripture and just being in the Bible. I mean, I can remember so many nights just of doing that. And I was sitting here and I was trying to think. I mean, there were times when I thought, well, maybe I'll be bivocational, but I've never thought really seriously considered not preaching the gospel somewhere or pastoring in some way. Now, I didn't know like the particulars, right? Nobody knows the particulars. I didn't have like I figured it would be somewhere in the South, but I didn't, just because I have a heart for people in the Bible Belt. But other than that, really, it was just a blank slate. As I went through Mississippi State, I even changed majors 4 times, the last of which being first day of senior year. Went through a whole lot of different things, wanting to teach and maybe be bivocational. I thought, well, that's probably what's going to happen, and all these kind of things. And when I got to Southern Seminary, the Lord started focusing that on, hey, you've got a heart for revitalizing a church, going into a church that may have some very serious issues at the door to meet you, but you've got a heart to do that and love those people through that, and to bring that through. It's just been a privilege to kind of see how the Lord's worked that out in my life, and He's done that through you guys and through my wife and through just different opportunities. I don't know that there was any I think it was done faithfully, but kind of the way that we did it was I can remember sitting down with Katie and saying, okay, hey, I feel like the Lord, we both know that the Lord is calling us into ministry. One, you get a veto wherever we go. Like if you just are like, man, I didn't like the way that church felt. Like, that's enough. You get the veto. We're not dragging you anywhere. I'm not, we're doing this as a team. And so we literally printed out a map of the United States because we just didn't feel the pull to go overseas. And I said, okay, here's where your family is. Here's where my family is. We're scattered all throughout. So I've got family in Oklahoma City, family in Mississippi, family in Kansas City. We've got family who were here in Jackson who are now in Little Rock. We've got family all over the place. And so I said, does any of these places like strike you? Does any of them pull me? And like, are there any of them you want to just X out? And I won't tell you which states we X'd out, but we, yeah. So we just prayerfully at every step just tried to follow the door the Lord was opening and accept the ones that He closed. And there were times where I had to tell pastoral search committees where, hey, if I don't take care of her, I'm disqualified to take care of you. So I love you guys. I love the time that we spent, but I don't think the Lord's calling us to this place. And they understood that, and we moved that way. So now I'm in college ministry and young adults. My age group is 18 to 30, and it's I feel very schizophrenic at times. You're putting on the hat of, hey, I'm ministering to this college student versus these people just had their first baby versus, hey, this person is going into the workforce. This person is trying to make their faith their own. They've just graduated high school and trying to figure out college. I mean, it's a lot. So, but that's where we are, and we're privileged to be able to do it. Yeah.
Cody's story is a little different. He went to the main campus at Louisville, Southern Seminary, and found out about our internship toward the end of that process and applied, and then came here after he had finished seminary and spent a year training here, and then ended up marrying Katie, and the rest is history. But what was interesting was when I first met Cody and we were talking, we were able to figure out that he had called me before when he was working for the development office at Southern Seminary. He had called me to ask for money.
The week before.
The week before, yeah. And I made a donation, so I credit that with him wanting to come here. But it was a very, very good call. He made a good pitch for why we should give to Southern Seminary. It was great. Well, I wanted to ask about specific things in your ministry context. So I'll start with you, Michael Lee. Tell us a little bit about, you mentioned a while ago that you stepped into a good situation. Tell us a little bit about what that involved and then what the Lord has done since then and how He's used you in that process to move the church forward.
So I decided to stay. I was actually applying for a job working at Northbrook. At the same time, thinking about working at Sardis. And I had told Sardis I was not going to, I told Sardis I was going to be making my decision of whether or not I was going to become the pastor, bivocational pastor there within 6 months. And I decided to become the pastor through or when certain church members were going through intense pain. And I was very much convinced that I need to be the pastor of the church because of certain situations where I needed to do some counseling and helping people with their pain. It was not a situation, so I'm going to get to how it was a very healthy situation in just a second, but because you can be in pain and still be healthy. But they were in a lot of pain, some people were, and I thought there's no way I can just leave. That's not going to happen. That wouldn't be loving. And in fact, there were times where I would be driving starting out at dark and coming back very dark, because it takes an hour to get there, an hour to get back, and I don't know how long we're going to be counseling. And just, on fire, full of energy, ready, ready to go. And God was, I'm not the type of person that really likes to fold laundry and deal with mess. But I loved these people, and I really wanted to help them through the things that they were struggling with. So that's why I took it. It was their pain that helped me to take it. And I think that's important to think about when you take a job as pastor, because that's what you're going to do. You're going to step into a lot of mess and a lot of pain. And loving the Lord and loving other people is essential to that, and feeling their hurt to help them get through. Now, praise God, there's so much healing and health that's come from that particular situation that I'm talking about. Why was it healthy? Because they loved the Bible. They were accustomed to expository preaching, and they had the expectation that that would continue. So going through book by book, this is what we want. We want Bible. Are you bringing Bible? Yes. Good. Then you keep doing that. And so when I stepped into it, I started to do expository preaching. We preached through, no, I don't have an Excel spreadsheet. We have a little bit of a different setup with that, but we went through Ecclesiastes. We went through all of John's writings. Now we're going through the minor prophets, and then we're going to go back and do all of Paul. And so we're doing it expositionally, and they just love it. So that's the health of it. You know, that's where they're growing, is because they love so much the Word of God, and they love each other, and they pray for each other. So when we started to do things like go through 9 marks of a healthy church on Sunday nights. And so we outlined it. So we need plurality of elders. Okay, so we're going to do that. We need deacons that do this. So we're going to do that. We have expository preaching. So we're going to continue to do that. Here's what church discipline is. Here's what the Bible says, and we need to do that. And they're like, yeah, we do. So we've had to do that. We've had to do church discipline. So I think certain things like that show that there's tremendous health. A willingness to do what the text says, and since we've been there, we've been doing a lot, but it still feels very slow. We're in the process, and you can pray about this. We're in the process of having a plurality of elders. They've already accepted it as a concept. Now we have to take the next step of laying on hands and ordaining, getting new deacons. We're in the process of implementing and practicing church discipline. And it's hard to do that. I could talk more about this, but it's hard to do church discipline, especially when you're in the midst of trying to ordain elders, because I want the eldership there first, but at the same time, I have this mandate. Michael, you are the pastor. Do it. So that I'm doing this to some degree alone. And I don't like that as much, but we're hoping that that will change soon. Prayer meetings, we are doing this. We're walking through thick theology on Sunday nights. So all of these things are very healthy. We're supporting the missionaries that are even in this room, and we're all about somehow being able to be involved with church planting. It's a different situation when it comes to a city that's only a town that's only 2.5 miles squared and 345 people live there. When you talk about moving out and sending out, that concept is easier to understand in a city like this, where people come and go all the time. When in a town like that, generationally speaking, no one leaves. And to be honest with you, it's kind of like a who wants to leave? Mm-hmm. Because it's really bad out there, and you know what I'm saying. So, but we're still about planting churches and getting the word of God out. I have a missionary, a person that's joined the church recently, and they are a missionary in resident working for Wycliffe. And so there's still that push in their hearts to be on mission. How to do that, we're still trying to figure that out. So those are some things. As far as practical things, I mean, I've got a list here of the things that I was writing down. We did update the bylaws. That was a big thing. And going into it, I mean, I'm bivocational, so I'm very busy. So I don't have time to sit down and write out all that stuff. So I just simply emailed Tom and I said, could you just give me yours? And I'll plagiarize that. I mean, not like in an Ed Litton way, but, you know, like in a normal way. We had to kind of adjust it. We had to kind of adjust. And, you know, there's a difference, right? We're talking about tradition, things that are handed down, not copied. But, yeah, we redid the bylaws. We updated it to protect ourselves certain legal things because we just live in a really weird world where what happens when someone tries to join your church and get married and they look like a girl and you thought they were for 5 years, you know? So we have to ask certain questions when we're doing membership interviews that are already in the bylaws to protect ourselves, you know, about a biblical definition of manhood and womanhood and so on and so forth. And also updating plurality of elders, church discipline, and all that's in the documents, and that was very helpful. And I would say to any church planter or person here that may be thinking about doing something like that, yeah, if you just have to do that, we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just go and email Tom, and that will really help. So yeah, those are some things.
So I hear you saying then, church order really matters.
Yes, that is so important. I mean, the regular practice of communion, we are doing this. Just the way you do communion, who hands out communion, what does the blessing look like at the end of the service? There's many things, even the words that we use when we hand communion out and what we say. So much has been absorbed from the leadership, to me, from the leadership here at this church, that I don't even know. It's honestly, I come to the word tradition. This handing down of something that didn't really belong to Cornerstone, but it's been handed down from the scriptures and it's being implemented. Polity is so important. And that was one of the main things I wanted to make sure was being done well very quickly. So.
Yeah. Zach, you made a transition from a church such as this one actually, Cornerstone, to a much more rural area, much more smaller church and different population. How has that been? Have there been some challenges and some blessings in that transition?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult for pretty obvious reasons. You know, you leave family. The church is a family. You leave family. You leave loved ones. You leave support systems. I mean, when we were living at the house on Lambeth Street, we had multiple families within walking distance who could come and babysit and help us around the house. And I mean, it's just the church being the church in that area. It's beautiful. And we had to leave it. So that's not fun for anybody, right? But with that said, we left this family and we went to a new one. So it was difficult for that reason, leaving family, but it's been an incredible blessing because of the people. I love the saints at Providence Baptist Church. You just go down the names and they come to your mind and your heart wells up for them because you love them. And so it was hard to leave this family, but luckily we found a new family in Crockett Mills. And so, you know, you can go to rural places. It's really okay because you're going to find people whom you love. And it's a glorious thing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's key, is that you love the people that the Lord entrusts to you. And when we had the privilege to visit there at Crockett Mills, actually we were at Sardis too, and we saw this in both of you guys, but we could tell both of you love the people that you're with. And you love them because you know God loves them. God has chosen these people to be his own, and you are committed to serving the Lord who's entrusted them to your care. So yeah, those kind of transitions can be difficult. I made a similar one when I was in Louisville. I was part of a very healthy church, but for a brief time. But I think I learned more about ecclesiology in about 9 months at Clifton Baptist Church in Louisville than I'd learned in my entire life before. And then I took a call to be a pastor at a very small rural church. So that transition was very stark. But over time, the Lord ultimately made me love that church even more than I had loved Clifton. And that's what we want for both you guys. We want you to love where you are even more than you did Cornerstone when you're here with us. Michael, Spain, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I thought you might expand on a little bit. Challenges of doing ministry in your hometown.
A prophet is not welcome in his hometown. No. That is sometimes the way it feels. It's got its blessings and it's got its curses. We love Milan, from Milan. My Spain heritage is in Milan. So I mean, we know lots of people and have been there a long time. Our home church is there. The blessings are the fact that you have connections already. Whereas, with Timothy or Christopher or even these guys taking established churches, you go to a new place, you don't know anybody. Well, we know a lot of people. The challenges, though, have been, we expected challenges. We did not think that doing what we were going to do was going to be easy necessarily. But it's been a little more difficult than we thought. It's had some challenges more than we thought. For one thing, we are ministering in an area that it's kind of like Jackson in the sense of there's certain theological stances that are not very welcomed. And that was the case with me before I even did the pastorate. I mean, we kind of walked back into that situation, and that's unfortunate. And that's I've not had a lot of that confront me in the face, but it's been there lurking in the shadows, and I think there's been some, it's like, hey, I've got friends, I've got people that love me and know me all my life, but they would not dare probably ever come and visit our church, Mm-hmm. So you've got that. That's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is that Milan is a town of about, I guess Milan and the surrounding area in it, kind of all around us, 13, 14,000 people in the whole surrounding. And it has lots of churches, and we knew that. But there's not a lot of what I would say healthy churches. I mean, most people are not very familiar and accustomed to expository preaching, biblical theology, strong ecclesiology, healthy membership. And so, and the first initial response you get from people is, well, why would you want to start a church here? And we have churches everywhere, churches on every corner. And then it's like, well, but there's these things that are lacking. And then they just kind of look at you strange because they don't know any different anyway. And so the challenge has been for us is our core group is not very large, and which is fine. But the other families that are with us live in a town 30 miles northeast of us. So we have basically, I'd say 2 families, 3 if you count Megan and Michael together. Now they're married, right? They're all in Huntington. We're in Milan. We're the only family in our church that is in Milan. So there's nobody else in our church that does life in Milan. They're there on Sunday, Mm-hmm. And I'm very thankful for the Hermes family. Absolutely, very thankful. I mean, they've been so great and do all kinds of things, and very gifted. But it's created a challenge. And so, with me working multiple jobs, my wife works full time. She has a great job. She works 50 hours a week. We're spread thin with things, and they are too in Huntington. So there's not a lot of opportunity right now for us to really be doing much else than what we're meeting and whatever. Of course, COVID has, just like everybody else, it's created its challenges. It knocked out some personal home health care that the Hermes family needed for ailing family members that they were taking care of. So once COVID happened and they lost that personal in-home health, they have to rotate in who can be there on Sunday and who can't. So, Charles and Annette will be there on one Sunday while Sarah stays there, and then Sarah will come the next Sunday and Charles and Annette stay there. And, small group has been hard to even do because we did it for a long time, but then it got to where with the jobs and everybody scattered, and then the Hermes boys, very hardworking guys, they have they're doing commercial electrician work. Well, they're doing jobs like in Nashville, putting in Verizon stores and Wendy's, and so they're gone during the whole week, And of course, Charles works in medical research, so he's back, and it's created those challenges. And so I have really been praying the whole time, Lord, we need you to send us. We need some more core members. We need some people who will lock arms with us, join with us, mature, like-minded, fruitful, resourceful people. I need some elder quality guys. We need some people who can do music. Because right now, if one family's gone, that's it. So we're out, and it's. We hadn't met in 5 weeks because of COVID. So it knocked the Hermes family out 2 weeks, and it knocked us out for 2 weeks. So it's got its challenges, but I have really prayed for that, and for physical bodily support, and of course financial support. And I've actually gone and met with people. I've written letters to people, but I've actually gone and had lunch with guys that I know, breakfast with guys that I know, and I have been very candid with them and said, I love you, you're a brother, I've known you for however long, I know that you're a mature believer, and what I'm fixing to ask you to think about or pray about doing is risky. Now, it may not seem as risky as leaving here and going to Utah, right? But I'm going to ask you to pray seriously about leaving the church where you're very comfortable and plugged in and already doing something. Not because I want to steal you from that church, but because the Lord is trying to do a new work here, a healthy church here, and we need some more people that'll be a part of our core that will join us. And some of these brothers have been people who are kind of frustrated where they are because they want some of these things. But when push comes to shove, they're not going to leave where they are. They're not going to. And to be quite honest with you, I think that mindset, even though it's just relocating to a different church, not even moving a town, right, or anything, that whole concept of relocating or picking up and going somewhere to help a gospel work, whether it be to Utah or just to another church in Milan, it's not on people's radar. It's not. And, even when you try to make the case of, hey, I know you're gifted and you're using your gifts there, but you're in a church where, no offense, but if you left, there are 3 more families behind you that could be doing the same thing. We need some of those gifts. We need some, really. And, the Lord just hasn't done that yet. And I would say that that's been probably, those are probably the greatest challenges for us right now. Obviously, yes, we need some more financial support and things like that, but that bodily presence of people that will walk with us and join with us and want to be a part of having a healthy, solid, meaningful church. My dream for this at the very beginning is to have that kind of church in my hometown. And I will say, a lot of people will say, well, you should never go back to your hometown and plant a church. Well, that's overstated a little bit. I think that there's something really for that. And I don't regret at all doing it, but it's definitely had its challenges. Definitely had its challenges. So, I come here kind of discouraged this weekend, right? And then I hear all these guys talking. I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're going through similar things, just in an entirely different context. When Timothy says they have, 12 members, I'm going, or however many members you had, I'm going, hey, we've got 12 members, but so that part of it is encouraging. But yeah, those are the challenges that I think that we have in our hometown. And we're talking about even, my own family, right? My own family is plugged in where they are, and they're not leaving where they're going to be either to come. So it's it's difficult.
So maybe if that stirs in someone who's here, or maybe someone listening online, I promise you, if you visit Grace and Peace Church in Milan, you will hear the Bible preached. Michael is a very gifted expositor of the Word. Michael, you've got some more information available if anybody's interested in looking further into that. I want to talk to these 3 guys for a minute because, Michael, you had already been trained before you moved back here, but you 3 did our apprenticeship. And so, how has that helped you? And you can be as expansive and laudatory as you need to be. Okay, somebody say something.
So Katie and I on the way here were talking about this very question, and it just, I think for me it boiled down to a couple of things, and I think with what the Lord had been doing in my life before I moved here, I already had a deep love for the church. I had a love for what He does in the ordinary means. Much like your story, I didn't become a senior pastor. I moved to a I don't know if you call it a colony at this point, where it's 100 people in the town, like a colony, whatever you want to call it, like village. Yeah, yeah. They burn the post office burns down, and they're like, did we build it back? I don't know. It's one. They got down to 3 members. They got down to 20, and so we slugged through that. But it was a joyful work because it was people who loved the Lord and just wanted to have a presence there in Kentucky and for the gospel. And then we moved here, and I think for me it was a couple of conversations, and then opportunities to teach, opportunities to kind of hone that as a craft. I love the term apprenticeship. For that reason, but then it was also I think it was maybe Lee. I was in his office. I verbally process a lot, and Aaron is going to say amen to that. But so each one of the guys in the office got multiple conversations from me where I'm just processing things, and I think it was Lee who just talked about living under authority for a season before the Lord blesses you with having some authority, especially over His bride, the church, and just taking that so seriously. And I got that from all of you guys, Nathan and John, and all of you guys, just that, hey, this is a serious task, and this is a responsibility and a privilege. And then there was also just I think for me it's been the camaraderie. Like I love being able to call Aaron and say, hey, I'm about to teach this verse in Timothy. Could you just let me talk this through and then point out my heresy if it's there, or or just say, hey, this is wrong, or this is, or I think you're on the right track. And I love that as a brother in Christ. I just appreciate that so much. I mean, we've had those conference calls with the guys here just to say, hey, I've got this thing that I'm dealing with. What do you think? Can you help me think this through? And that's been invaluable to me, and it's been so encouraging. Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
For me, I'm able to compare my time in the apprenticeship and the internship with my time at Union. And this is not to speak ill of Union, obviously. I love that institution. I grew tremendously there, but and it's not this. And this is the fault of me being on a baseball team. Essentially, I was completely disengaged from a local church in college. So I have these 2 instances, both in which I'm studying theology in college and then at the seminary level. In one situation, I'm not tied to a local church. In the second situation, I am. And so I'm able to see what happens to a kid when he's filled up with theological knowledge, but he's stripped of this deep and abiding connection with a body of believers, a family who's going to walk with him and give him chances to put that theology into practice. And I can juxtapose that against this time in the internship when I'm studying theology extremely deeply under the care of pastors and being able to live it out in the context of a body of believers. You cannot overstate the value of that, folks. You cannot overstate the value of that. And so this vision for connecting theological study at the seminary level with a local church is a beautiful and very needful thing. And that's how it helped me. Specifically in my theology, it helped me as I reflect on my studies in the apprenticeship. The biblical theological studies really helped me. How do we put the Bible together? That one really stood out for me. And that helps your preaching. That informs your preaching. I'm about to preach a text tomorrow where Jesus is titled the Christ, the Son of the living God. So what does that mean, that he is the Christ, the Son of God? Well, the biblical theological studies in which I engaged here at Cornerstone is going to help me put together the Old Testament in such a way that can inform that answer as I preach to people who have probably never thought through these things. That's really helpful. That's my head, but my heart was engaged the whole time. And so as I'm studying biblical theology in this instance, I'm also falling more deeply in love with the local church and falling more deeply in love with people, the church, the people. And so that helps you as a pastor in tremendous ways.
I can't really improve on that. So, Dominion and Dynasty by Stephen Dempster. Read that book in the internship. Extremely good with biblical theology. Just want to give some very specific books. Pierce for Our Transgressions, excellent book that helped me in preaching the cross of Christ. The Trellis and the Vine. For all pastors, Biblical Foundations for Baptist Churches by Hammett. That's an excellent book.
He was one of my profs, my first PhD seminar prof.
Let's not gloat, okay.
It was enriching. It was so enriching.
Aaron was my professor, by the way. I remember one time I challenged Aaron, by the way, in class. You probably don't remember this, systematic too. And it was a fantastic class, by the way, at Southern. And it's so good that it was the first time any class ended in an applause. They all applauded at the end of the class. It was kind of miraculous. But I challenged you, and you said to me similarly what you said to Lee when, I think Lee, he said to you, don't ever say that to me again. In the middle of class, he said to me, "That's just the way it is, Michael," and just shut me up. Anyway, back to what you had asked. So those are some resources that I refer back to. Like, the reading curriculum was so good, and we read like a book a week, and some of the books were ridiculous. And praise the Lord, y'all don't use them anymore. But y'all still use the really good ones. I went in there this morning and looked at them. I've recommended them. I've used them in teaching the church that I'm at, so curriculum-wise, I've been equipped. But then when you get to books like Biblical Foundations for Baptist Churches, you read it, and then you come to church, and then they're doing it. So that's very important, where we learn that, well, the regular practice of communion doesn't cheapen communion. Mm-hmm. That's a big assumption where I'm going to. You know, you go to church, and well, we don't want to cheapen communion. Well, so we'll do it once every 10 years. See, like that's an assumption that actually hurts. You know, this isn't a Coke and candy thing that we're partaking of. This is a thing that you've got to be reminded of week by week. And that has been ingrained through books, through practice, orthodoxy, orthopraxy. And so that's what you were saying. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on that. But I will say this, is all the praise I can give for the internship. There are some things that you won't learn when you go and plant your own church or you go into another church that the internship will not be able to teach you. And that's just because you got to deal with a particular type of mess. Or taxes. I keep coming back to that for some reason. But like, yeah, you got to do things like church budget. And that's hard. Like, those types of things take up so much time that I wouldn't, it's just a warning. Getting into that is just difficult. That is so difficult. And I feel you, brother, with even being with the people is so encouraging when you're not with them. So we live here in Jackson, not being there every week. We just go into the weekend. We're kind of opposite. So I go there the weekends and then come back, and it's been a week since I've seen everyone. That's so hard. And that community is something that we had here at Cornerstone, that we had there in the internship, and we want to replicate it, but it takes a lot of work, and you have to fight really hard for it. And it's just... I think the thing that's the sweetest is that it's that communal growth, it's that communal discipleship, and that's the hardest thing, being bivocational, to have the energy for. You have this big vision and not even close the amount of energy needed to accomplish it. So it's just hard, but that's kind of what you're doing the internship for. If I didn't have that internship, my word, I wouldn't know. It would be awful. I couldn't do what I'm doing now at all.
So, would you have any advice for someone who's aspiring to go into ministry?
Let me say this. I know that and you might have been directing it just for these three,
No,
but
you too.
I'm the one that came in, ahead and trained and, mostly done with a PhD and all that kind of thing. So I had pastored for years. I mean, I started pastoring and, I took my first job in 2001. I mean, 20 years ago. So I've been doing pastoral ministry for 20 years, which is kind of hard to believe. And that's looked like a lot of different things. It was a small stint in youth ministry, mainly being the lead pastor, bivocational, full-time, interims, pulpit supply, all that. And I'll just say, and I'm a seminary supporter, I mean, I'm a graduate of Union. I'm a 2-time graduate of Southeastern. Love the academy, love all that. But there is, like these guys are saying, there is so much that you can't get in a seminary setting because number one, it's not built for that. Number two, you don't have time to. And I wish, that 20-something years ago, I could have gone through an apprenticeship program. I wish I could have done that. Luckily, I had people that I could reach out to, and I'm not one that shies away from, calling this pastor and picking his brain or going out to lunch and picking his brain and learning. So, I had people that invested in me and taught me things. And so, I was thrown in the fire. I learned how to run a business meeting and do a church budget and wrote bylaws from scratch and did all this stuff early on. And so I've done a lot of things young in life, it seems like. I hope I don't die young, but I've done all these things young in life. And so I wish that I could have done that because I would encourage from a guy who didn't have that, plus now a pastor/seminary professor, if you have the opportunity to be in this sort of setting, by all means take advantage of it. By all means take advantage of it. I've got a young man that's coming to us that actually is fixing to graduate from Liberty with his master's, and he lives in Camden, and he had reached out to Aaron about doing the apprenticeship program. Well, he's doing it because he needs one semester of kind of an on-field, experience, and it's just part of the curriculum. Well, this is 3 years. He just needs a semester. So it was going to be too much for him to do that. So Aaron, I would love to be more involved with these guys than I am because although I teach many of them and I've taught many of them in the seminary setting, I'd love to be doing what y'all are doing. This is like a vision, dream come true type thing. But, Aaron said maybe you could help him do that, and so that's what we're doing. So he's going to be coming to us for this whole semester, and I've got him doing very similar to what y'all are doing, except that it's in a condensed way. But he's got to read, a couple thousand pages. We're going to be discussing. He's got to write some papers. But then I'm going to be giving him responsibilities. He's going to be preaching. He's going to be helping prepare communion. He's going to be, doing little things that are obviously helpful to me because, me and my wife do all of that right now, as a small church plant. And so he can do those things that will be a blessing to me, but also training and stuff. And I'm hoping, I'm praying that maybe the Lord will lead him to come and land with us. He doesn't have any church like a Grace and Peace or a Cornerstone or a Sardis or anything where he is. But then again, Camden's an hour from Milan. So I don't know if I don't know how if he'll be able to do that or not. But, I would encourage guys to take every opportunity. Because even as a seminary professor, as much as we want to pour all that we can into you, there's no way that we can invest what an apprenticeship can do. No way. Yeah. At the on-field, practical, that was one of my things coming out of Union and even out of seminary. And when you're leaving, they go, what are some things that, and I'm sitting there going, we got guys that y'all are training and they're going out in the churches, but there's a lot of stuff that they don't know how to do yet. And they're getting eaten alive because of it. They're going through all this heartache that like Lee went through and I went through and I've gone through, these things that, you get thrown into situations. And so it's a huge blessing. I mean, to have something like this at Cornerstone where the local church is connected, pastoral ministry is connected to also the academic training is the best thing and the best option. And if you can take it, by all means do so. It would be foolish not to.
I'll say real quick, and then I'll back off. I know I've talked a lot. Read a lot, read a whole lot, and continue. Make yourself a person that reads all the time. After the internship and after the seminary, do all that, and just you're going to have to keep studying. But I do think the days of full-time, posh, easy preaching like these guys get to enjoy, are coming close to an end, because I think bivocational ministry is going to be very, very common. So I would say you're probably going to need to get a job, and you're probably going to need to get a skill, and you're going to need to study something where you're going to make money, and probably good enough money to where you do not have to depend on the church for your main source of income. Because that's just real. That's reality. Okay. I'm never anticipating that I'll ever be able to be supported fully by my church, ever. So, not to say that couldn't happen. I'd rather have just you told me this. You said lower your expectations so that you're never disappointed. But I'm in a small area. And I was told the days of full-time ministry in rural Tennessee are over. So I would say get a source of income that is going to be able to support a family that can afford to buy a home that's $200 per square foot or more. And then don't quit reading or studying or preparing for ministry, because you're going to have to pay for life. So you can't just go into seminary and do all that studying and then come out with a PhD from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary and expect a great, great job waiting for you.
Amen. Living proof. I mean, really.
Yeah. And then on that note, if you do something like I did, which is I'm working at a classical Christian school, which is actually seeing just a huge revival across the United States. So many people, I would say everyone should send their kids to the school that I teach at, which is Augustine School. And just know, if you're a pastor, you're going to do mental work all the time if you're a teacher, okay? And that's going to be completely draining. You're going to do lesson plans. You're going to teach every day for 6 hours a day, and you're going to prepare a lesson on Saturdays, and then you're going to preach on Sundays, and then you're going to go back to it again on Mondays, and you'll never have rest. All right?
And the older you get, the harder that gets.
Yeah. So if you're doing double mental work, just be ready for a very draining life. I would say even physical labor during the week, and if you're a bivocational pastor, might be really good medicine for you. Something to think about.
So I've just finished my first year of full-time ministry. We've been married for 18 months and 3 days. If it is the 17th today.
It's the 18th.
It's the 18th, 4 days. And so one of the things I think that I would say to somebody considering full-time ministry is it's the same kind of phenomenon that happens when you go to seminary. Is all of a sudden the thing being before the feet of Jesus, loving Jesus, is now got a grading scale with it. Not like intentionally, and no seminary professor that you would talk to would want to say, yes, we're grading you on your spirituality, but in some sense now there's a necessary system that you've kind of been put into, and unfortunately with our ministers, a lot of times, and rightly so, right? They're leaders and they're confidants and they're counselors and ministers of the word, and these things are so good to come alongside you, the saints, for the work of the ministry. I'm afraid that a lot of times, even in my first year of ministry, I've found myself giving people permission to minister, right? So like as I'm shepherding and loving our students, I'm having to say, hey, you realize like you don't have to plan some huge event to share the gospel. Like you could just set an extra place at your dinner table and text that guy you've been thinking about, like. Or just saying, hey, I've had volunteers, or even just recently, who love our ministry and love our college students and young adults and young professionals, and who that light bulb moment has gone off for them, and they said, you know what? Yeah, why would we throw on you all of the ministry, that the Great Commission work that we should be doing, because our students are just getting to know you, and they've known us for 30 years. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. And don't put that pressure on yourself to substitute for Jesus. We're pointing people to Jesus, right? So there's this very real pressure, especially at a larger church. So I'm in a little bit of a larger church, and right outside of Nashville, and I lovingly call it like a large country church. We're where you get away from the concrete, you get outside to the rural area. But we had about 500 last Sunday in attendance for worship, and it was one of the challenges is we've got a large budget, and we can say, okay, well, let's hire a minister to do this work, right? And then, well, how are we reaching our college students? Well, we've got a minister for that, right? And so I'm having to help our people say, hey, you've got the freedom to speak truth and life into these students' lives, to open up your life, and for me to open up my life, and to model that as well for Katie and I to say, hey, we're going to be hospitable with our home. We're going to be intentional about, hey, I just saw my neighbor outside. I'm going to get to know my neighbors. I've been very convicted of many places that I've lived where that's not always been true. I lived in Louisville for a lot of years, attending seminary, working multiple jobs at a time, and serving voluntarily at this church for 2 years, and that had about 20 people, and loved every bit of it. I loved my work, I loved my school, I loved my roommates, I loved everything. But there were times where I thought, I was scared to death that the person next to me would say, hey, did you know all of your neighbors in your apartment complex? Because there were many days where I could not say that. I said, there's people under me living under me, not under me, but living under me, that I couldn't tell you their names, and it was, unfortunately, it was the day that they started moving out, and they were wondering if, hey, these guys above us want to, maybe they want our golf clubs that we, don't want anymore, or whatever. This really happened, and so we got to kind of meet them and share stories with them. There were some seminarians as well, so we kind of had some there, but I think just setting appropriate boundaries for yourself in ministry, and also saying, hey, I can't do this alone, and being very honest with your people, being transparent with your people, and saying, hey, I can't do this alone. If you've hired me to reach the entire world, you're going to have to look in another place. I mean, if you've hired me to reach all of Joelton, you're going to have to look in another place. You're going to have to join me. I can do what I can do. Katie can do what she can do, and hopefully, by God's grace, we can do that well, but we have to have help in this labor of the Great Commission. And I think that's, again, that harkens back to the local church.
In Ephesians 4, we see that Christ has given gifts to the church for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry. Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. Zach?
Yeah, I would say if you're an aspiring pastor, right? Mm-hmm. Start doing now the things that a good pastor will do or should do, even though you're not a pastor yet. So be hospitable. If you're a college student, be willing and ready to invite other college students into your dorm, get to know them, foster one-on-one relationships, even disciple someone if you can, if you feel that the Lord's leading you to do that. Invest in people, get to know people, love people, because your work is going to be people. And so begin doing now the things that a good pastor should do, and love people, get to know people.
That's a great word, Zach.
Yeah, it is.
You're not going to magically change into a different person just by stepping into an office. Yeah, that's a good word. Well, we'll conclude with that. Thank you guys so much for being here, for your time. We love each one of you and your families, and we're thankful that you were here today. So we're going to be a little bit ahead of schedule. Our next session, we're going to go ahead and move that one up to 3 o'clock. So we'll see you back here at 3 o'clock. We have one more panel discussion to listen to today, and then Tom's going to finish us up after that. So take a break.